We haven't even got any I didn't hit record soon enough to get any banter.
Yeah, but I guess this is going straight to YouTube now, though.
Well, this is the problem with the recording.
What's the problem?
Well, it's going to be unedited unless you're editing.
No, it's unedited to YouTube.
Oh,
exciting times.
Dangerous.
Scary. Yeah, that's not good. So I got to really watch my language.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can you be explicit on YouTube?
I guess you must be able to.
You must be able to.
You'd think you could, but I don't know.
I don't know.
Welcome to the Financial Independence Garage, where we share the tools to improve your finances and unfold the roadmap to financial independence. They're totally going to know I'm reading it now because I'm on video.
Yeah, absolutely, they will.
Yes, they will.
Happy New Year, listeners. Happy New Year, gentlemen.
Happy
nice
New
to be
Year.
back.
Happy New Year.
First episode of the new season. We don't really have seasons, but maybe we should.
Well, let's call it the new season.
Yeah,
I like that.
The new season where The Economist has taken on the chore of putting us on YouTube so you can see our beautiful faces.
That's right. That was
we're assuming that that's actually going to work. We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know yet.
This may be edited right out of the audio recording.
There you go.
All right.
But that was what did I call it on the Twitter machine?
The exciting new feature.
Yeah.
And I had to go like, what is our new feature?
Yeah, I was a little concerned as well.
We had talked about it though.
Yes, it had to be brought up.
Yeah.
Now, one of the criticisms from 2020 is that we spend way too much time before we actually get talking about anything important. So let's start with the most important part of the beer. I get that out of the way.
Yeah, well, I would like to thank Danny for this delicious backcountry Ridge Runner Pilsner that I've got today. I'll read you guys a little blurb here. It is stiff boots slam hard onto the steep edge of the range. Maybe you're high above Squamish. Maybe you don't look down. Dawn, the sun, flares huge at your back. Marmots, lynx on the dark rock. Spearhead, Tantalus, the ridge flakes off left. It's okay to sweat. Cover hard ground. We've got you covered. Never hit the backcountry alone.
So Danny bought you that beer and you kind of were rubbing it in on the show a few episodes in a row.
Of course I was.
So Kevin stepped up and bought us around, the money mechanic and I. And
yes. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. I got myself a Guinness.
Oh, Guinness. Nice.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Well,
it's going to make some noise.
And the best part is after with the widget in there.
Yeah.
You got to get poured out quickly, though. So as you listeners know, if you're an avid listener of The Garage, that the beer tube started making its rounds in 2020, and it will continue again now that, well, hopefully Canada Post has got their stuff sorted out and actually can send stuff on time anymore. But my mailman might be wising up to the heavy liquid packages that show up at my door. But I have a beer from our good friend in Ottawa, Blair. Thank you very much for sending me some Pink Fuzz, boys. I have Pink Fuzz. Yeah, this one is
what is that?
It's a grapefruit wheat, and it says, but don't call it fruity. Subtle citrus bite in a delicious pale American wheat ale is enhanced by a slightly sweet finish. This ain't no dessert drink. It's seriously tasty beer. So let's give it a shot.
Nice.
Well, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Happy New Year.
Cheers,
Happy
listeners.
New Year.
Hopefully some of the listeners join in with a beer at home when they're listening to this, eh?
I hope they do.
So.
Yeah.
Did you guys see my other fun new item for 2020? For Christmas, I got a tall can Yeti.
Oh, I've got one of those too. I should be putting this in there, but I want to see the color. I'm pouring into a glass.
Fair enough.
Pouring into a glass. Hey, you know what we need this year is FI Garage beer glasses.
Oh, wow. We should be making that
for the swag shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right.
While we're thanking before we move on, I want to thank Family Money Saver from Twitter for this awesome photo.
Right. That's you as Kelso taking all your money to the Canada Revenue Agency, right?
Wheelbarrows and wheelbarrows.
Yeah. I love it. I'm going to get that. I want it on a shirt.
I think that will also have to be in the swag shop, won't it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This is pretty good. It's definitely not what I was kind of expecting when I read grapefruit wheat, but that's quite pleasant. It's pretty hazy too.
Nice. Oh yeah, that is very hazy.
Mine is exactly as I expected when I opened.
I mean, Guinness is always delicious.
We did the Guinness episode already, and I think I said like it was 300 years old, but it wasn't. It's supposed to be 1759 or something.
Yeah,
anyway, there should have been a correction. Okay,
oh, well.
So here we are. It is the beginning of a new year. We all managed to get through 2020 in our own ways, the challenges they were. So I think we're going to tackle today's discussion from kind of 2 points of view. We talked about going back to basics because hopefully there's lots of new people on the journey to financial independence. And there's always room to sort of revisit some of the beginning, the basics from what we remember and from all the other great content that's out there available. But I also think it's a good time of year for those of us that have been, hopefully working towards things and optimizing, to maybe do a little assessment of your progress, where you're at. Maybe it's rebalancing, maybe it's looking at what you're putting in your TFSA. You got a couple months to figure out your RSPs for the year. So it's a bit of a time for, I think, reflection and assessment and to move forward. So we'll kind of weave those together into our sort of usual discussion. Free ball discussion.
Yeah, there we go.
Did you say stumble? I like that.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I call it more improvisation. This is a improvisation podcast as much as anything.
Hey, we're just here having a beer.
Yeah, exactly. We're just here to talk about the stuff anyway. So starting off then, I'll jump right in with, I've really struggled to decide what to use to direct my TFSA to this year. Now, many of our listeners may be just doing, monthly savings towards the TFSA, and that's easy because then it's just done all year long. If you've been busting your butt and getting your finances in order for a couple of years, maybe you're able to save up in an EQ account and have that lump sum to drop on January 1st, which is the case. If it is the case, that's awesome. But it's also, I do, yeah. I mean, it took a long time to get from the monthly savings to like upping it to like the monthly savings plus being ready for the 6. It took a while to get there. It's not like first year you just go, oh, boom, I can fill my TFSA and then have next year's ready on January 1st, right?
Unless you were really smart and you were 17 and you saved up $6,000 and then you turned 18 and you lumped it right from the start.
Then
you'd be way ahead of the game.
This is true, yeah.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Why'd you go with EQ instead of putting it into an investment account and investing it? Because there's got to be some downtime in EQ, right?
Yeah, that's a really good question, actually, because I could just stick it in non-registered and then transfer in kind to the TFSA.
Yeah.
That's a really fair point, actually. I hadn't really even thought about that. I think just because we have 2 EQ accounts that the money just goes into there and to transfer it into sort of a savings. But yeah, you're absolutely right. There's some opportunity cost to not putting it in the market, or maybe it's safer to be in the EQ. I don't know. That's a great question though.
And do you save it up over the whole year or just like the last 2 months?
It's a little bit of both. Again, like I've talked about before, I'm really lucky to be a contractor incorporated myself. So I manipulate my pay during the year a little bit. So in sort of November, December, I can look at what my year end's going to look like and go, okay, maybe I pay myself a little bit more this month. That'll get me to the finish line for the TFSA, right? So it's totally different than people that are straight T4 income. I can play a little bit with that and then it'll work out. And I do that to work on my tax rate as well. And this is another part of the discussion we should have today is, this is a great time to have a look at what, maybe you are T4 and you can't change your tax rate, but if you have flexibility.
Hey, you can change your tax rate if you're T4.
Yeah,
tax rate by making RRSP contribution.
And that's my point about this. This is a great time for a little bit of assessment. And, if you're at the beginning of your FI journey, this is like one of the basics is know where you're at, know where you stand, right? You need to have a place that you're starting from to get on your journey to FI, and everybody's start's going to look different. But I think we need to look at similar things, right? Is kind of know your tax bracket, and it's not hard. Just look it up. There's your provincial tax rate and there's a federal tax rate, and they give you nice little sections. You're like, okay, if you're over 48, if you're over 96, if you're, et cetera, right? So what do you guys think are those beginning steps, even if you're either at the beginning of the journey or the beginning of a new year? To me, it's looking at available RSP room, my tax bracket. How can I, optimize the best there? Know my spending, right? Like we talked about that. You brought it up, account, before we started recording.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're really talking back to basics, I mean, the whole key to building wealth is to spend less than you earn and invest the difference. So you've got 3 levers. You can increase what you earn, you can reduce what you spend, and you can do better with your investments. And I think that's the kind of, those are your basic starting blocks. And for a lot of us, we've figured out the spending side of things. We're at a comfortable level of spending. Maybe we aren't comfortable with what our earnings at. And I think, like you said, figuring out the tax side of things can really actually affect your investment returns.
Mm-hmm.
You said, we're comfortable with what we're spending, but that's probably because that's everybody's first step, right?
Yes, that should be the first step.
It seems like the easiest, and you don't have to make big changes to change your spending.
No,
really.
No, but I think that's the first place to start. And I think it fits in with an annual kind of review as well. And I know there's some other bloggers I've followed, went through, Tanya over at Tea on Fire there. She did a pretty good analysis of her 2020 spending. And it's interesting. And I'm bad for that. I'll admit that I'm bad for it. I have a pretty good ballpark idea of where everything got spent. But that's because I'm really active looking at all my accounts, right? Because I kind of nerd out on that. So, but I think for other people, having, whether it's YNAB, which none of us have used, I don't think. Maybe we need to do a YNAB test run, but
maybe
people love it. YNAB's awesome because it gives your money jobs, from what I understand, but it also helps you track everything, right? And if, one of the best books you can read at the beginning of your FI journey is Your Money or Your Life. And one of the exercises that Vicki Robin goes through in that book, or her and Joe, I should say, co-author, is getting that spending down on paper or into a spreadsheet or into an app so that you can look and know where you are. Right.
I think that's a good point. And I think if you've been at it for a while, a lot of us become a little complacent. So the start of the year is a great time to look back and say, well, I set these budgets and I thought I was following all of this. I should probably go through it and make sure that what I actually think I am spending is accurate.
Totally.
Yeah. And there's also things that at first you're going to put it off as a one-off type of expense. But if that type of thing keeps happening every year, well, it's not a one-off. It's just a once a year expense, not a once in a blue moon expense.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. That's the exact great point I was going to bring up, because, maybe you had higher home repair costs, or maybe you had vehicle repair costs, or like these unexpecteds that throw a little bit of a wrench into your FI plan is that you only need to live off, 40 grand a year. So you just got to get that cool million invested and you're set to go. And then you're like, well, last year was 45 because we had to do some work on the furnace or, new transmission or whatever. So it's like, okay, maybe I got to build a little bit of buffer room, give yourself, like, nothing shouldn't be finite. And, we've talked about this before. I think it was our episode with Peter, wasn't it? Accountant. It was about the risk of fire. And it's like, you should retire again every year. And this is, I think, what we're trying to get at is you should plan your FI journey again every year, right?
Yeah, like, reassess and take a look. Another thing I wanted to, just because you mentioned a lot of people are putting out their posts on how much they spent in the year, for our Canadian listeners, if you see an American that says, oh, I lived off of $22,000, I need you to remember not to feel bad. A, things are considerably cheaper in the US than they are in Canada. B, they have the exchange rate going for them. So their 20 grand is really more like 26, 27. I mean, what's a 6-pack of beer?
Yeah, I mean, that's
half in his head.
No, you're right, because I was just doing 30% on 10. So 26 is pretty accurate.
Yeah, thanks. But it's a big factor of, you go down and you can, in a grocery store, buy a 12-pack of Bud Light for $7. Like, right. There's a lot of things, what's gas? Gas is a fraction of what it costs up here. So don't feel discouraged if you're saying, oh, it cost me 40 grand a year to live, but there's these people that are living for 20. I mean, it's not apples to apples if you're looking at an American blogger and what they're spending.
Well, the other thing too is it's probably not that unreasonable for Canadians that are just starting off on the journey to look and go, what are these people talking about? 40 grand a year. It costs us 80 grand a year, right?
Yeah.
Don't just go by other people's benchmarks or go by what other people are saying, right? I think this is where it becomes so personal. It's really hard at the beginning of the journey because comparison is kind of natural. We all want to do that, right? Like, oh, how do I get to be that person or that person or that person? But every situation is so different that by tracking your own spending and having a look at it, you can make that analysis yourself and say, I think this is important that we've brought up before too, is keep the things that you really value, but cut ruthlessly on the trash
Anything
that doesn't
else.
add value to your life. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's, yeah, I totally know what you're saying about the cost of living. And I think that goes for across Canada too, right? Because we've got listeners in, smaller towns that don't suffer the high housing costs that, big cities do, and things like that. Right. So this is I think the information that you get from the FI community has to be taken with a little bit of a grain of salt and said, okay, well, this is our particular life, whether I've got kids or a dozen dogs, or my favorite hobby is hang gliding and it's expensive, or whatever it is, right? Like you gotta fit it into your lifestyle.
And I think
wheelbarrows of money going to the CRA is real expensive. So
absolutely. But I think the money mechanic hit the nail on the head when he said, spend on the things that are worthwhile for you. It's not, if you're just starting out, it's not worth slashing spending for the sake of slashing spending. You really want to hit the things that are not giving you value.
I think the accountant brought up something good a long time ago in a past episode too, where he was a little ruthless slashing everything, but when you realize that you missed something and it did add value, then
you bring
it back, right? Because I mean, I think I'll be definitely guilty to say, like, you know what? I'm not slashing spending on craft beer. There's no way, right? But that's because I'm like, I like craft beer, so I'm not going to do it. But maybe I should do it. And
Lucky's pretty tasty.
I'm drinking more Rainier than I used to. I'm not going to lie. But I guess what I'm saying is sometimes I think it's a bit like new habits, right? Like they take 3 weeks to sink in, right? That's another book I didn't read last year that's on the list this year, boys. It's Atomic Habits.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I got it reserved at the library.
Okay, well, can you read it in less than the 3 weeks and then give it to me?
Why don't you just reserve it?
It wasn't on my library card. Anyway, that's another topic.
Oh, okay.
Once again, we're off track.
I am enjoying Thinking in Bets, though, but I do realize now that The Economist does not need to read this book.
It's always worth reading a book, right?
Like The Accountant, seriously, like I'm reading this book, I'm like, The Economist could have like co-authored this book.
I can't wait to read it.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
just for that, I should read it.
You should, yeah.
See if I got any IP claims.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
On the spending on what makes you happy, I just wanted to mention another book I read a couple of years ago, Worry Free Money by Shannon Simmons.
Yeah, I read that one too. Yeah, we both read that one, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of an unbudget book.
It is a bit, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, another book that I haven't read, and it's not specific Canadian content, but it's Ramit Sethi, right? And his big thing is, slash all expenses, but spend lavishly on what you really value, right?
Polarize your spending.
Yeah, well, that's a good way to put it.
100%.
Ooh, can we? There you go. There's an economist catchphrase.
Yeah, there we go.
Spending. Yeah.
Another thing. I think this is a good time of year when this is again start of the year. Look at all those things. Look at what you have been spending on, and if you value them, reassess. I know a lot of people get into the set it and forget it mode, but I mean, you probably should, like you say, replan every year. Make a plan. What's going on? Have things changed? Has your opinion on stuff changed?
You know what I found last year was I was making more than I was anticipating making.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a good problem to have.
Of course.
Hence the wheelbarrow.
You're right.
Could you just you need to part your hair a little off to the side a bit more.
Okay, next time. Next time, yeah.
Perfect.
But I was really having trouble. What do I do with the extra money? And I was, going on whims basically.
Oh.
So that was one thing I did. When I say whim, I meant, should I put in my RSP? Should I put in my TFSA? Should I pay down my non-reg loan?
Yeah.
So how many tontines are you in now? Then?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Got it in.
I want to bring this up. I am engaging the tontine.
Oh,
because this was the running joke of 2020, and I never got it because I never read the article that you found that you posted in the show notes.
Great article.
So
so good.
I actually read it, and I encourage the listeners to go and read this article because it was really interesting. Because tontines were super common back in, it was like the late 1800s, early 1900s, right?
Yeah.
And they basically formed what is the gigantic insurance industry today.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And as I read through it, and I thought, this isn't a terrible idea. If you could do it totally anonymously, so you didn't know who was in the tontine.
If you didn't know who to kill.
I think that there's the underlying problem. But it was a really, I mean, it's kind of where pension plans came from too, right?
Yeah.
Everybody pays into it, and you get it out. And there is a bit of sense to it. I don't know. We could have a little more discussion about it here.
Yeah. There's actually a lot of there's savings programs that a lot of people will try to administer in like third world countries where a village will all put in
Oh yeah.
very modest amounts of money to buy big ticket items that they would never otherwise be able to buy. So, whoever gets week one, well, they can buy a stove for their house, and then they all put it in, and then the next person get a stove for their house, and kind of the same concept of using that big pool of money.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So I guess I'll just finish my thought.
I guess you should.
Deciding what to do with any extra money was my number one thing to do this year. So that's done. But, it was something I identified and then dealt with.
So how did you make that decision? When the accountant's going to hate this because I wanted to bring up the RSP question. So I'm asking you the question. You led me into it. How did you decide whether you should put it in your RSP or not?
I decided not to.
Why? What was your reasoning?
I want to see how much I make, or how much, that's a decision I'm going to revisit halfway through the year. So.
Okay. So, but you said you'd made more money. So did you not look at the RSP contribution last year as a way of mitigating your tax burden?
No, absolutely. I did.
Did you look at your brackets and see if it made sense? Could you move between them, or were you in the?
Well, it didn't matter if I could move between them or not, because it's a marginal tax rate.
Well, I guess that's fair, yeah.
But
yeah,
I anticipated where I would be and kind of decided to make contributions based on that.
Well, I guess that's what I'm saying is I know it's marginal, but basically it's like if you're 5K above a bracket, or what's the point more than the 5?
Right.
Once you're to the lower one, right? It's like use the 5, or maybe it takes you 10 to get there,
right.
And
you don't get all the way. Maybe it's still fine.
It's still totally fine, right? But and this, the accountant doesn't want me to talk about this at all. But screw you, I'm talking about it.
What the hell?
There's so many questions about the misunderstanding of marginal tax rates and everything else, and I'm not saying that taxes should determine your investing or your decision making, but it's pretty easy to Google tax brackets in Canada and get your provincial and federal and go, okay, I'm going to earn this much this year, so the optimal RSP contribution is 10 grand. That gets rid of all that taxes in the higher bracket, right?
Assuming you want to be in an RSP at all.
Assuming you want to. I know we don't have to go down the rabbit hole here, but
no, now you brought it up, so we absolutely have to go to.
Well, you didn't want to talk about it, but this is a good question for people whether they're just starting off, and I see there's always a lot of confusion about this, and whether it's just like sitting down with the math and the spreadsheet and figuring it out that is an obstacle, or whether people are going, well, I'm pensioned out or whatever. Okay, go ahead, say what you want to say.
The only way the RRSP works is if you're at a lower tax bracket later in life.
Yes,
or the same,
absolutely, or the same.
Yeah.
I mean, you're getting tax-free growth, but then you're paying tax on all of that plus your original principal that you're taking out. But if you're somebody who, I own rental properties. Right now they have leverage. When that leverage goes away, I'm going to be making even more money that isn't going to have the tax shelter of the interest reduction. So I foresee in 20 years when those mortgages are paid off, I'm actually going to be in a higher tax bracket. Plus, based on how much money we're printing, do you really think that tax brackets are staying where they are? So what's the chance that you get screwed in the future?
Well, if tax brackets go up, your tax rate will be lower.
Tax rates go up, okay? Not tax.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I know where you're going. Yeah.
You're splitting hairs.
Yeah. Well, this is the YouTube section of we have to start a new Zoom call.
Oh, right. Yes.
Don't we still have 5 minutes?
Yeah, you know what happens with 5 minutes.
Might as well do it now.
Exactly.
Well, I've said we're doing it now, so here we are. We're doing it.
All right.